Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Life with me, Raza Gazim. The idea of the hardening of hearts, how does it impact on people? What changes would an individual go through when he or she has undergone this change? Can it be undone? Does this have an impact on the attitudes of a community?
Allah says in the Holy Quran, "Then your hearts become hardened after that, being like stones or even harder. For indeed there are stones from which rivers burst forth, and there are some of them that split open and water comes out. And there are some of them that fall down for fear of Allah, and Allah is not unaware of what you do." Although this verse was revealed for the Israelites, who were always prone to disobedience and rebellion and had to undergo punishment again and again, this disease of hardening of the heart is a common phenomenon in today's world too, when we see the evil human beings are capable of. People are slaughtered in cold blood, and the extent of barbarism shown by groups such as Daesh can only be a result of these people's hearts hardening even more than rocks. What are the factors that lead to the hardening of the hearts? What factors can soften the heart? The month of Ramadan, for example, should have helped us to soften the heart, while we cried of the fear of Allah in nightly worship. What else can we do to help soften our hearts, for them to be capable of greater humanity and humility?
We're honored to be joined by our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan, to discuss all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam. I want to ask you, first of all, what is this hardening of the heart, and why is it phrased in this way in relation to the heart?
I think it's important to understand the notion of heart and the notion of the centrality of the heart when it comes to the relationship to God and the relationship to Allah. As it is said in the Quran, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Is it not with the remembrance of God that your heart are getting peace? So there is a relationship. When your heart is at peace, your relationship with God is a good one. And when you have a sound heart, إِلَّا مَنْ أَطَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, except those who come to God with a sound heart, meaning that everything has to do with the heart. So the heart, when you are with God, when you are connected to God, it's full of light, and soft is the qualification that you have when it comes to the heart. On the other side, and this is what was said in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah when it came to the Israelite here and Bani Israel, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. And then your heart were hardened, and then they are hardened and stone, meaning what? That first, you forgot God. And this is one, that there is something which is, you are forgetting God, and as you were connected to Him, you are forgetting yourself. As it is said in another verse of the Quran, لَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Don't be like those who are forgetting God, they are forgetting themselves. By forgetting God, when you are now dealing with sins, as it was said, but also anything that has to do with excess in life is now covering your heart. So covering the heart is the very definition of what? Of a word that we have everywhere in the Quran, al-kufr. Al-kufr is covering the heart. So the softness, the natural softness of your heart is covered and covered and covered to the point that it's like stones, or even harder than stones. And this is the whole process that we have to understand. So being disconnected from God, and then connected to the world, and connected to money, connected to meat, connected to anything which is making your life forgetting the essential.
There was also something in the verse that was quoted about we cause rivers to burst forth from these rocks. Yeah. In relation to this particular hardening of the heart, how does that connect those things? What does that mean?
That's very important, because it's a metaphor, it's a parable that Allah is using for us to understand. They are hearts like stones, nothing enter. They are locked. As you had, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. They are sealed in a way. You have other hearts where something could come within. So it's a step by step, which is the spiritual journey. That you have like rivers, that even water, which is the source of life, which is coming from God, could go through rocks and start making its way. So this is the path. So even, and this is why, be careful, when you meet somebody and you have the feeling that his or her heart is like stone and closed, be careful. Water can come through. So water can be something which is the source of life, and faith could come. And there is in the following in the verse, there is something which is sometimes this rocks could just explode out of what? Out of faith. So everything is possible. So it might be that we are dealing with hardening of the hearts, but be careful. This is not the final stage. Everything could happen. You can just come back to faith. You can go beyond this. And the water is source of life as a symbol of something could happen even with stones that are perceived as with no life at all, meaning no faith, no relation to, no connection to God.
So in a sense, everything to play for, and there's always hope. Exactly.
Yeah, that's very important. That's very important because it's, you can go through the process of having your heart hardened and being close to, not connected and not open to the spiritual life. You can have this, and you can see sometimes people who are very harsh with this, that I will never accept that, I will never accept God, I will never, and you feel, oh, there is, and they can be very harsh with their words as much as their hearts are apparently locked and sealed. And then water could come, the source of life could come, and sometimes there is something that is happening that we cannot know. So there is something which is also very important. When we meet with people who can give us the impression that they are very far from our way of life, we have to be very careful, because one of the signals, the aspects and the features of hard hearts is the people who are judgmental. Very judgmental. So they look only at your mistakes and weaknesses, and there is no space for what? The feature of a soft heart is compassion, is rahmah. And this is why the Muslims are ruhama baynahum. They are full of compassion between themselves.
Is there a social impact, societal impact, due to the hardening of the heart?
Of course. When, for example, you know, the starting point of the revelation, it's all about open your heart. Open your heart, why? How? The starting point of the revelation, the verses that we have at the end of the Quran is about open your eyes towards the world, the universe are full of signs, and open your hearts towards the poor, because these poor people could be the way of your own salvation. They are the way of your own salvation. Look at your parents and know that your father and your mother and your father are the way of your own salvation. Open your heart. So open your heart. Come back to the sound, soft heart, which is the element or the right feature of a spiritual heart with God. So now, if you are forgetting this, if you are not connected to this, the social impact is you end up living for yourself. You don't care about poor people, you don't care about marginalized people, you don't care about injustices, you care only about your own profits and your own benefits within the society. So one of the dimensions of this process of hardening of the hearts is selfishness, is narrow understanding, is me first, is arrogance. These are the features. How can you be generous with such a heart? How could you show solidarity with such a heart? So there are visible signs of this with the people when they are forgetting the essential and ending up thinking about themselves in an arrogant and narrow way.
And does this hardening of the heart of the individual translate into the hardening of the heart, if you like, of the whole community? Could that happen? Did that happen? Do we have examples of that?
Yes, of course. At the end, we always have within a community, a spiritual community, people who are going to be the people who are reminding the rest of the community, and this is what we need. In fact, the messengers and the prophets in history came, peace be upon them all, came to remind us of the essential. Open your heart, be connected, and know, to the point that our relationship, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ, and know that God is, the knowledge of God is between you and your own heart. So if you come to your own heart, this is where you are going to get the quality of your relationship to God. So we have people coming and helping the community to come to this war. Because in history, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, by the time the people are going to their own destruction and corruption, what does it mean? It means that if we don't have this dhikr, remembrance, remembering the essential, coming back to our heart during the time of when we are fasting during Ramadan, when we are praying 5 times a day, what are we trying to do? To come back to our heart in order to avoid this potential collective hardening of the hearts, where we end up criticizing the world, thinking that we are the best only because we are Muslims. No, we are not the best only because we are Muslims. We are the best if, as Muslims, we are doing the best. That's the reality of our way.
Lots of interesting points that I'll perhaps pick up in a second. We do like to keep this show as interactive as possible and really value your opinion. Here is what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, what causes the hardening of the heart? Moussa from France said, sins. The more you sin, the harder your heart becomes, and then there's a covering over it, so that you are unable to really see, hear or feel any emotion related to spirituality. Layla from Kenya said, attachment to this world and worldly possessions is what hardens our hearts. We become too focused on material gain that we are unable to feel compassion and love for others. And Hussein from UK said, I think it's the excesses in our lives that make our heart hard, and as Allah says, causes a seal to form over it, such that we are unable to reach Him and truly connect.
I think sometimes people get quite arrogant if they are, blessed with certain things and they have a lot of wealth and they have good education and stuff, have a very good job. I think people kind of forget that they're no better than anyone else.
When you do repeatedly sinful acts, I guess you lose the remorse of doing that act, and then it becomes such a common occurrence that people lose magnitude of the sin they're about to do.
The hardening of the heart, in my opinion, is when you distance yourself from Allah, when you don't perform the basic obligations as a Muslim that we should be performing. So you don't do what you need to be doing. The basic thing is you don't pray. Once you stop praying, you distance yourself from Allah. And that hardens your heart. When your heart is hardened, you're not as compassionate as maybe you should be with people.
The word al-qalb itself means something which is turning, dynamic, and unstable. So actually, could we really maintain the stability of heart to remain soft?
That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your views featured in the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter. Now you can send your own videos with your comments and even your questions to islamandlife@presstv.com.
One of the things that comes out in terms of what you've said, that we shouldn't harden hearts, some people will argue in the Western society that we're living, we need to be a bit tougher. So that hardening is required, it's essential to actually be able to survive. What would you say to that?
I think it's not wrong. The question is, you should know with what you are hard and with what you are soft. And it's balance. For example, in the verse that I was quoting before, say, أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ, they are strong with the people who are denying God, the believers. Meaning, in fact, with everything which is the consequence of denying God, when it's about exploitation, about injustice. So yes, you have to stand up. You have to be harsh and hard in a way, but not with your heart, with your conscience, with your the consciousness of what is the right thing to do in your life. But at the same time, whatever is the situation. When you come and you deal with life and human beings, you always have to be soft, even with the enemy. This is what happened with the Prophet, peace be upon him, with the enemy. Once you win, it's not for you just to be harsh. No, this is where you have to show mercy. You have to show solidarity. So in a situation where you are facing power, be harsh and stand up. When you are facing equal human beings, never forget to be at the same time open with your heart. And when you see people who are in dealing with a status, or you win, for example, in a struggle, or you have the upper hand on a situation, you always have to show mercy and solidarity. So it's not the same. We are not talking about the same thing. Always have an open heart, and sometimes keep a sharp mind, a hard line when it comes to injustice. And this is the way the Prophet, peace be upon him, was. He was always soft and kind, but when it came to injustice and exploitation and not respecting the dignity of a woman, for example, in one of the stories that we have in his life, he stood up and said, never. So these are two different things. And in fact, it's because he was soft with dignity and love that he was harsh with justice and refusing exploitation.
One of the things that you talked about earlier was this idea that there is everything to play for, you should never give up hope. If your heart has become hardened, what is the mechanism, what are the processes to actually, once you've recognized the problem, to undoing that? And actually, how do you soften the heart?
That's very difficult. And the starting point is exactly what you said. Once you have acknowledged, and this is sometimes very difficult, because some, out of their own, spiritual journey, they are very harsh with people, and they don't see that they are very harsh, and their heart sometimes are very hard and hardened in a way which is, look, that's not because, you can be arrogant with your own spiritual journey in the way you are judging people. So you cannot even acknowledge that there is a problem. Of course, I'm good. I'm praying 5 times a day. I'm a good Muslim. I'm a believer. I'm a practitioner of all the principles of Islam. And I'm doing a practice as a practicing Muslim. I think that this is something which is we start with this, is how do you acknowledge this? Is in the way you are. Sometimes people are very hard with their own self, so you also have to be soft with your own self, step by step, rely on God. So coming back to His mercy, His compassion, His rahmah is the starting point of everything. And then to be less judgmental is also something which is important. And then to have what we have in the mystical tradition, but in fact in all the Islamic teachings, in the Sunni and the Shia tradition, we are all the same on this, which is al-muraqabah. Come back and monitor your own way of dealing with things. How are you with the people? Or are you starting by judging, or are you starting by welcoming, even with your own self? Are you listening more than you are talking? When it comes to communication, are you listening more? Even with yourself. Some people talk to themselves, but not listen to themselves enough. That's a psychological basic teaching that we need to get. And then also when it comes to the community, are you serving or are you commanding? Are you judging or are you participating? So this is the starting point. And through this process, step by step, starting by listening more, serving more, your heart is, when you deal with life, I used to say, when you deal with your own self and you know who you are, you end up being less judgmental about the others, because you know what is inside. What is inside. And this is one of the teachings of the Prophet. Look inside. Istafti qalbak. Ask your heart what is happening in yourself. So starting with yourself and then also serving more. And the more you deal with real life, the less you are hard and harsh with human beings, because life is complex and you have to put things into perspective and always rely on hope and potentially, as we were talking about, potentially, there always could be water coming somewhere. So the source of life is there. So even if you are dealing with your own sealed heart or with others, remember that there is always hope, but you have to ask for this hope at the right place, to the right being, and He's the one. Allahu la ilaha illahu.
In terms of the idea of softening the heart, when you have, that balance that you're talking about, striking between being hard and when to be hard and recognizing that, and then as a community, how does a community help itself, maybe after the throes of a revolution or whatever, when you want to get something done, justice and so on, how do you then go into that ideal of actually softening the hearts of the whole community and not just beyond the individual, as it were?
It's very difficult, and this is why, for example, you have this emotional push that sometimes could be very harsh with people, and it could harden the hearts, that it's emotionally we're for justice and we are going to kill, and this is where the balance that we are talking about in ourselves is a balance between your heart and your conscience, and damir, is that monitor what you are doing. This is why we have it in the Quran. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا, that the hatred of people don't push you to be unjust. Who is going to be? From where? It's going to descend your mind. And this hatred is coming from your emotion. The heart is giving you the light. The mind is giving you the balance. And you need both, always. This is faith. Faith is mind and heart. And you can soften your heart with having a mind and a spirit and a conscience that is always there. So to the point that you have to be just with the people, that you cannot reject the people, and we have to be very able. So check your emotions, check your heart in the way that, love is a good thing. But as we know, love could make you blind. Who is going to give you back your sight, your mind, your awareness, your faith? So that's something which is essential. So you can, some people out of love for one have a very hard heart with all the others. That's love. No, that's not love, that's blindness. So you have to check.
Initially, one of the things that I talked about in the clip was the idea of sins hardening the heart, but then also that if you go into excess of things which are permissible, like for example oversleeping, that in itself could cause a hardening of the heart. I can think of at least one person who would just say, come on, that's a bit much, hardening of the heart because I've overslept.
You know what, that's a process. When life is taking over in everything, that at the point it's not the meaning of things that matter, but the way you are dealing with your own life. So oversleeping, overeating, is that you don't put the meaning of things. So life is taking over in its most brutal way, the most inhuman way, that at the end you are not balanced. Yes, you can end up being completely at least far from your own heart, in the way that there is no meaning, there is no awareness, there is no balance in everything. So yes, we have to be very cautious with the way you sleep. In fact, you know what? There is a lot to say about the way you live in the way you sleep. There is a lot to say about the way you live in the way you eat. So are you eating with a sense of the meanings of things, the balance, the dignity in the way? And you can't be dignified if you are excessive in all what you are doing. Because at the end of the day, the spiritual path is all about balancing. وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ. So you have to set the balance with equity. This is faith. That's exactly what we have to do. And this is not an easy way, but this is our way. And this is the way we are dignified with a soft heart. Coming back to the sound heart is to come back to the soft heart that is welcoming the people, full of compassion, but also harsh when it comes to face injustice and undignified attitudes.
Perhaps a very powerful message said very, very softly. Despite the tough environment that we find ourselves living in, whether it's in a Muslim country or otherwise, the need to recognize this concept of the hardening of the heart in ourselves is essential. This hardening is gradual, and one is prone to justifying this in small increments because one sees it as essential for the quality of our life. We need to be careful that we don't sacrifice the quality of our spiritual life for a marginal improvement in our material life. That's all the time we have today. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for joining us, and I thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.